presenters today are Chris from Liquid Hub and Mike from MYIPCOM. And take it away.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Mike will also be giving martial arts lessons a little later, if you're interested. We've worked together for a number of years, and what we're going to talk about tonight is an engagement we did a couple of years ago, actually, when Service Cloud first came out. And we think that we were the first people to do an integration with Cisco full CTI of Service Cloud in the world. At the time, we couldn't find anybody else that did it. And we were successful, so we'll tell you a little bit about it. It was a client over in the UK. They're a distributor of HVAC materials, so they had like this dispersed group of customer care agents around their plant, answering calls from customers. Where are my pipes? Where are my valves? Where are my air conditioning units? And that kind of thing. Plus getting emails, and then the emails would get escalated to senior people, and it was just chaotic. So they wanted to bring them all into one location and build a call center around it. So they asked us to come in and help them. And we said, you know, many orders were timing critical. The calls are coming from these guys out on these job sites that did not have much patience for anyone. But the other interesting thing was they were getting a lot of emails too that had very high priorities, because sometimes these guys in the field would be calling back to their headquarters and talking to a coordinator who would be sending emails just pummeling the client looking for stuff. So that was an important point in what we pulled through in the process, is the email sometimes had a higher priority than a phone call. So the technology again was Salesforce Sales Cloud, Cisco UCCX Call Center, and then we mentioned cable and wireless because that's like AT&T equivalent in the UK, and that did have some importance in terms of the type of information we could get from the carrier coming into the CTI channel. And everyone knows what CTI stands for. Computer telephony integration, more usually known as the screen pop that you get. Okay. We had a multinational team, 3 continents?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Yeah. We had PM. I was serving in a customer experience SME role. Michael as the architect developer, and also had some backup on the Cisco side. And we had a Salesforce architect and developer, and then we had some offshore guys that helped us with that piece of the puzzle. So the way we pulled out these requirements, because remember we talked to you that there was this just big group of people and they said come in and fix it, is we pulled all the stakeholders into rooms and we did a week's worth of iterative design sessions where we mapped out in storyboard fashion, what do you do, how do you do it, how does the phone ring, what phone numbers are calling you, and we found out a lot of stuff. For instance, we got rid of toll-free numbers in the whole equation and went to local telephone numbers. And the reason is that a lot of the guys in the field, the customers, don't like to call 800 numbers because it runs up their cell phone usage because you're going off net. So they want to call a local number because that's on their network calling. These kind of things that you don't really think about, especially in the U.S. You think 800 numbers rule.
Because the cell phones are more expensive. They pay different costs. So like a lot of your countries, if you're working over there, they have a lot to deal with, like, you know, you pay a surcharge for using cellular versus landline costs. So that's one of the main drivers.
So we brought these guys through these sessions, and we're going to show you some of the slides that came out of these sessions. Our whole approach was to have technology guys and process guys and stakeholders all in the room at the same time, so that the functional spec that resulted from the sessions could be easily transformed into a technical spec and very quickly and go right to the development stage. So Mike, you want to
Sure.
take the lead on these?
Yeah, so thanks. So the idea was that we had to look at different channels of communications. So this was in a contact center, or it doesn't matter whether it's in a contact center or whether we're in an office or whatever. The channel of communications happens either through telephone, email, chat, web. So what we did here was we were looking to Chris's point was that by storyboarding we understood the flow, and that was a big part of understanding the different pieces. So one of those was the email. They get a lot of emails coming in from the outside, and we needed to be able to integrate that email capability into the not only the contact center but also into Salesforce and how it was captured. So we had a pretty neat flow on how we handle that even within Salesforce. The other part was the computer telephony integration. So it's a call center, and whether it's they're an inbound call center as well as a little bit of an outbound call center. The goal was that we needed to be able to do some call treatment prior to getting a screen pop. So instead of just coming directly to a salesperson's phone and just popping, we needed to do some call handling, pull additional information that we needed in that. And one of the options was, I think Chris will explain it, is that we could set up an IVR, and so to be able to grab some additional information if required. So the reason we did that, we were able to do a dial within the Sales Cloud, so click to dial functionality. We were able to create hyperlinks off there and create some triggers that we were using. Custom views and reports was another piece of it that was important, because we were able to take in all these contacts coming into Salesforce, build custom reports so they could use it as an outbound tool as well. So they could go back and look at certain accounts that they had issues with and be able to have people just go ahead and automate and call back, the callback function. And the other thing about it was taking caller ID, linking them into accounts, and being able to get a screen pop off of there. And we had different views within Service Cloud was one option that we were kind of building towards. And we, we'll talk a little bit more about it. We can tell you a little bit of the difficulties of that.
Well, one of the big discussions that we had and we wrestled with for a few days was what would the agents be using as their interface? Is it Salesforce or is it the Cisco client? And ultimately, it was a Cisco client, and we'll show you why. But that's always a big debate. People think, oh, we're a Salesforce shop, we need to use that. But the reality is, a telephone call or an email are hitting your switch before they hit your software. And so it really makes a lot of sense to sort those things out at that level and then drive it into the software.
Yeah, and another point why it's important too is because in a contact center, you're also looking at what the volume of call is and there's SLAs built into it that it's harder to manage within Salesforce. So the idea is that we could see call pressure, or by queuing calls and stuff, or emails. They have the ability to have a lot more visibility of whether they need to ramp up, or they can send out messaging to the people out there to say, hey, speed up, we need to pick up the pace, or be able to alternate call flows with automated functions where, hey, if you have an overflow condition, where they can punch out and then be able to go from there. So a lot of different options, but the idea was we're trying to drive it into some KPIs because they wanted to measure what they were missing, and Chris actually picked this out. It was a good catch. Was the problem was KPIs. How do you measure? They were having a hard time measuring it, and by taking Salesforce data, we could use that as a quantitative ability to take data out and measure. Hey, how many contacts did they do? How many? What was the follow-up behind that, and all that? So then, all of a sudden, you have measurable information that makes it a lot more efficient. So those were just a couple.
And that's the thing, is matching it to the number of calls you had and number of transactions, and then how you completed them in Salesforce. So bringing those two pieces of the puzzle together and driving the statistics, but also how you're going to run the center. Do we need to have more people that have better skills on email? Do we need to change the forms in email? And as you'll see, we started opening opportunities in Salesforce from emails that came in through the Cisco chain. And I guess we should probably keep moving on the slide. So here's an example of like one of these storyboarding the process where an email is coming in or a telephone call is coming in. You've got the cable and wireless means that we're going to be catching some data. That's the little world thing, the AT&T-ish thing down below, and feeding that into Cisco. Same thing with the email servers dropping the calls into Cisco. And then based on rules, we're dropping this into a queue, which will drive how the agent's going to deal with it. So you want to talk about the automating the case management piece? That was cool.
Yeah, so we basically, you had two options, right? One, everybody's familiar with email coming into Salesforce directly, right? And the other option we had was bringing it in through the contact center and then letting the contact center backfeed Salesforce. And the reason why we looked at that was because we could basically, they want to be very responsive to the customer. So it was easier, instead of them having to look at a screen and trying to pull up the notifications through Salesforce on a pop-up that comes up to the side, we felt like they would have better visibility of what was in the queue with these emails and the service levels. And if they weren't being serviced, then we would pop them to Salesforce and then basically handle them with some triggers in the back end. So, so the goal is that we open up, agent could get the email in, it would come in, and then they could open up, it would pop to Salesforce, and then they could create a case generation from there. So we were using the sales, it was forcing them to follow a process of case generation in one aspect as well, and capturing the information. So it made it a little easier, more responsive to the customer, and the other part about it is that it was all, gave us a lot more visibility into, from a KPI perspective, because what they were doing was that if it came into Salesforce directly, it's very hard for them to go ahead and feed that back into a contact center easily. So the goal was to measure, we would have now measurable emails, and we could say they could basically take somebody off of phones, focus in on emails, and bring them back, vice versa. So.
And then it's measured through the one interface instead of I've got emails over here, I've got phone calls over here. How do I know what to do?
Yeah, and that's an important part.
Okay. This one was where we had orders that were still coming in from the legacy system on WebSphere, and we had to deal with that. So we won't go through too much detail on that. But it started to get, this is where it started to get a little bit tight.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to point out one thing, so what we did was we said, all right, how do we drive for their legacy? They had WebSphere was a e-commerce platform that they had. And the goal was from a, whether it's technical, we were trying to figure out, all right, how's the best way to bring that data back into Salesforce? Because we wanted everything to come back into it. So what we did was we came up with a way that we, when they wanted to send an inquiry, that we would route the inquiry back into the front end like we created with the other ones. So it's a very simple, they were trying to do a very complex problem of trying to push everything into creating another Salesforce triggers and trying to build some apps, some back-end pieces to make that function. And what we did was we already kind of came up with a different concept to push that right into the front door of the UCCX as well. So, and the idea is that we could capture from there the sales order numbers and stuff like that. So we were looking for trigger points within the email stream to allow us to do that. And then at the same time, these are the same type of fields that we would do back in case management and automate it in case if we needed to push it.
And it would also drive the rules in the queue.
Yeah.
So if it was a really important one, it would get priority in the queue.
Yeah. One thing to point out is what we were doing every night, they were batching up jobs to Salesforce to do all the POs and the service orders. So that's how inside sales handle everything within the window, and you could pass a lot of different options. You could chat, so like a supervisor could chat with the agent. The agent could go not ready, go offline, and so it was a way that we put together to try to keep it more of an integrated solution versus a outside solution.
This way you got all of the features of Cisco and all of the features of Salesforce without having to compromise on the two. We have both of them equal. And then, like Mike said, they're trading data underneath as well. Incoming call list. Yeah, I'm going to just pass over this.
Yeah, this was the callback function we were talking about.
We are a little tiny bit rusty on this. I haven't looked at it too often.
Yeah.
But, oh yeah, it was after 10 minutes of call, queue, calls were forwarded, voicemail. Yeah. So you would, if you're in queue, you'd get the option to leave a voicemail, and then we take that voicemail as a WAV file and drop it in the queue still. So now you'd hear it, and then you could click on it and call back out to whoever you had blown off.
Right. There was two options that we were looking at for this particular one. One was, hey, leave me a place in queue, I'll call you back. The other one was, all right, we would just take the email, put it back in queue just like a call, and then when the agent got it, he would hear the message and then be able to, make a call back. The problem, like we said in Europe, is that putting them in queue and calling them back could be a costly proposition. So part of the economics is that they didn't want to call back people that were not landline based.
Right. But also, it was also time sensitive because they needed these orders now.
And it's very true as well. Yeah.
And this stuff is just the after-hour holidays. After-hours holiday messages. It's nothing to really talk about. This is the list management piece. Outgoing calls.
Yeah, and this was based on they could build an outgoing call list every day, and then they could set aside people in the contact center to go back and make outside calls. So there's almost staff augmentation to the sales teams to do follow-ups, to case management issues, orders that were broken for some reason. So we had a whole trigger back-end piece built that would run reports, and then they can go to the view, find the report they want, and then they can start working off the pick list and be able to go backwards.
And these are some of the reports, just the way we're going to set it up. So you'd have the historical reporting from the UCCX, that's the phone system level, IVR, voice and email, and then agent specific. And I think that's where we were pulling the agent specific stuff was going to come from Salesforce.
Right. So and in these IVR, each of these have Cisco has a bunch of cameras for this particular product, Contact Center Express. I don't know how many are you familiar with contact centers in general? Yes? Anybody know? So Cisco has two flavors. They have a big blown version called Enterprise, and they have a smaller version made for small, medium companies, smaller contact centers, anywhere from 5 agents to 300. And so UCCX is a very integrated product. So you inside there, you have it all on one platform. You have your basically your IVR, integrated voice response. So it's the menuing system we all love in here from every time we call into somebody, right? And like Verizon. ACD was basically your automatic call distribution. That's your queuing engine. So it manages sending calls out to the different agents and for voice and email. And the agent was that. So all these were reports that you run against it to figure out how you're doing and performing in an overall contact center. Because what contact centers do is that they can make things very efficient. And they are very good at that if you can set them up in a way that makes them run very well. And the way you do that is how you manage that process is through a lot of good reporting.
That's it. So, do you guys have any questions for us?
I thought you mentioned IM in the beginning. Was that part of this at all?
No, not well. In between agents and go ahead.
Yeah, so they didn't use IM directly off a website, but they were using IM between agents and the supervisors at that point. Yeah, we talked about, a next path, another phase of it was to increase the tools that were out to the customer. One was called web chat.
Right, but again, most of these people were in the field, so they weren't usually at desktops. They were calling from cell phones or trailers, out on a job site.
Yeah.
Can UCCX handle that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the UCCX has two options. Yeah, they have a web integration piece that they can do.
That'd be like if you had it on, like your external website, like a link, like kind of like Salesforce's live agent, if you will.
Exactly. Same concept. Where what it will do is redirect the basically rerun a little. Some of them are built in Java, ASP. So it depends on what the actual chat client is sitting on embedded with the page. But yeah, basically, there's a proxy that sits in between them, and the proxy will make it look like there's a call in queue whenever a request comes in. And then basically, everybody's been I've done those so many times that you go to a commerce site, you want to chat with somebody, or they're proactively probing you.
It would have been one of these channels coming in and would have fit into the rules.
Exactly. So it's a similar concept. We would have rolled it into a queue structure as well. But one thing to point out, one of the linchpins for this on the desktop side was the Cisco Call Connector, which we were struggling with towards the end of it because they end of life the product. So we had to do some customizations to kind of keep it running the way we wanted it to run. But
because one of the key points, and Mike as a big Cisco guy would probably throw stones at me, but Cisco and Salesforce neither one of them are kings of the contact center world. That belongs to the Avayas of the world, and even Oracle's old Vantive stuff and things like that. So these were two guys that are big players in the marketplace starting to play in the contact center world, and there's still a lot of loose ends. And there's still a lot of loose ends out there.
We don't worry about it, won't hurt you right now.
Yeah.
So,
but that's why you need people like Mike to make that integration work. It's not simple.
Excellent presentation. So taking a step back, when you were going to sell this concept into the company, who on the other side was caring about this from an executive viewpoint, and how did you position that and sell it? Because you didn't have the answer out of the box. You probably had to do some discovery, and how did that work?
That's a really good point, because a lot of times you get these customers coming to you going, yeah, we go implement this. Well, when we started the discussions with them, they told us we need to get this contact center up and running. So I asked them a number of questions about, well, where is your functional spec? What are you going to do about, you want to do CTI? What kind of information are you getting from your customers? Where are the calls coming from? You want to use Salesforce. What level of work have you done there? Have you ever? And as they started to listen to these questions, they were like, well, we don't have a lot of these answers. So our proposal was, we'll come in and we'll facilitate this discovery process and build you a functional spec, which will then turn into a technical spec and implement it. And to your other question of who was involved, we had the IT team. We had a number of different IT guys were coming in as we needed their pieces and sitting in as much of the conversation as we could. But we started the first couple of days with a few IT guys, but mainly the business stakeholders, storyboarding everything out, and the IT liaison group that you always find in these bigger companies that were helping to guide the business and the IT guys to come together.
So was the first person a VP of contact center or a CI? Who's the first executive that really got
in there? But they weren't the main player. To Chris's point, it was the business
Well, yeah, I think.
So like a GM
Chris,
or a...
what was his last name?
Chris
His name was
Speaks.
Chris. No, but that, he was
the other.
the other Chris. There were, and I was Chris. There were 3 Chris's that were on the
They all speak English.
Yeah. But the one Chris was the VP of what do they call him? IT liaison. I can't remember exactly what his title was. And the other guy was VP of Field Operations and Enablement, or e-commerce enablement, or something. And he and his staff were the ones that came in, and they're the ones where we went through all these. What numbers do you call? You know, what numbers are printed where on your brochures, on your websites? How do you communicate this to your customers? When you change this process, how are you going to let your customers know that now you're calling here and there? So there's a big change management aspect to this. And that's how you get successful, is laying it all out and then going in both directions, building the technology, but also making sure that the change management's in place.
And I can tell you, to Chris's point, and he did a great job with this, is that, we do a lot of development. We've done a lot in my 20-some odd years in this industry. And, as a lot of you have been through, the problem is they say we need to solve a problem, and as technologists, we go in and we solve the problem. The problem is we don't always hit the mark. We're about maybe 80, 70% to the mark. We're close to 100% here.
Well, you know what? To that point, when we knew we were going to do this, I reached out last week to our client and said, hey, by the way, Mike and I are doing this presentation. How's everything going? And he said, it's working great. They haven't really moved beyond this, but nothing's broken. And they haven't called or yelled or said, said the process isn't working. We did the business processes to the point where what we built actually sufficed it. When they went into production, they didn't find so many broken things that needed to be fixed already.
Right. And we had a good plan of testing everything.
Yeah.
So now we had a flow, a storyboard, where we could test the storyboard accurately, and it was.
I sort of have 2, and they're sort of overlapping questions, but you said right at the beginning the decision you had to make. Who rules the interface? Is it the Cisco client? Is it the Salesforce client? As we're sort of moving forward into much more of a mobile world, and sort of that desktop is no longer, the only way these people kind of interact. Are there things that might change your mind? Or do you think that the decision you ended up to is likely the way it has to be? You said, well, it comes to the switch first, but are there contexts where you said, maybe we would have shifted over and said, let the Salesforce be the container and the Cisco be the piece inside of it versus the other way around?
Well, I don't see. Well, that's a good question. And I think what we did was how we came up. It could have gone either way, right? Realistically, but what we did was we were listening to the process. And instead of trying, what happens a lot of times, we've captured the process, and we still don't listen to what's really in front of us, right? And we still go down, no, we need to do this, we should do it through this. And as a technologist, I could have done either direction for me, but we just listen to what they were asking for, and
I think
and how they run their business.
For this particular one, I don't think we would have changed our mind, but I'm thinking of some other clients, and if a lot of the interaction is coming off, say, web forms, or people going to your mobile site and clicking on, I need help with this or that, we might have gone the other route of opening it, and you might go the other route and opening it in Salesforce. And then anything that's coming in through a phone queue, the queue would be smaller, because you're not going to be pulling those in, a web form wouldn't go through an immediate queue. It would be on the back side, because it's already in Salesforce. I don't know if I really explained myself well, but the point is that no, you still have to have that discussion and figure it out. If it's all outbound, maybe that's where you're going to. If it's all outbound, you may start with Salesforce, because nothing's coming into you that's having you have to decide what you're going to deal with first, a call or an email or something from the web. You're going out. So my workflow is coming from the software and the vehicle for getting out email or a telephone call is the next layer up. So in that case, you might switch and go the other way.
And the feature might be to one point to point out is that, and even in the contact world, contact center world, it's changing. To your point, it's moving to calls are down, emails are up, chats are up, and I have a customer that I do a bunch of stuff, Bed Bath and Beyond, and they're going through that process of migrating from a pure call in to more of a web mobile app. People are on tablets and iPads. So, but this, if you look at this particular business model that these guys have, they're really, you got to remember, these people are out, you know, they're driving in a truck, and a lot of times they have low-tech devices because these are service people that are carpenters, and so that clientele and that it wouldn't have fit that model, but you know, for somebody else, we might have went the other path.
And you had a follow-up too?
I did, and you may or may not even really know the answer, but as I was reading, it's appearing that at least on the Salesforce side, there continues to be a lot of work around the Cisco and CTI integration. How much easier would it have been today, or harder would it have been today to do what you did back then? Are the tools getting a lot better, or is it just fairly cosmetic still?
Let's put it this way: I wrote my own code because Call Connector went away, and so my company, we developed our own that we market. So the idea was, and we saw some.
It's available on an ecosystem, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're on the ecosystem now, and we were security scrutinized. You go through the whole process. But the goal is that what I found is it was lacking. And there was no way I wanted to have some triggers and controls before I send it to Salesforce, because the APIs into Salesforce is sometimes how the data is formatted is very rigid, and I need to be able to manipulate it before getting there. So to make things easier for us, we came back and we wrote our application is written to run across not only Cisco but a lot of different telephony platforms. So you don't need to have a contact center. The product runs across everything. It just because we knew we had to go across market more as well. So
yes.
I know you were doing this a while ago. Did the API limits or any other types of limits come in as a problem?
Yeah, the versioning. So here's a big problem. Software development toolkits changed, and some of the older calls and the older because give you an example, the Salesforce was written. The Call Connector for Cisco wrote theirs in a previous toolkit, which broke when we went to run it in the in console, the agent console. So we went from and so there we had to go back and basically recompile it into the new toolkit. So what happens is what you've written previously, especially if you're going back, we have to keep going back and checking it, because as the SDKs increase, we found that it does break previous applications. So that was a big one that we ran into. Towards the very end, you're like, oh, I see, I almost to the door, right? And they slammed the door shut because they changed the SDK on us, and when we were testing it, and that's when we had the whole issue of recompiling it for it to work.
With the different channels, the emails and the phone calls, and even at IM, are they getting the same performance metrics for the contact center, like speed to answer?
Absolutely. So that was the reason why we did it. So your point is it was a good point, because that's what we were trying to get to, is measuring the performance of the person. And we're running out of time. Okay, so
we're getting
we're getting hooked. All right, I see Matthew already. He's got his keys on. He's got his hat on. We're out of here. So, but anyway, that was pretty much why we did it.
Yeah, I don't want to cut the discussion short, but I know we did put a time frame out, and folks have other things to get to. So, I think folks are going to hang out. Thank you very much.
Wait, we have our swag.
Chris and Mike, and yeah, we got to wrap things up in true Philly Force style and give away more stuff.
That's right.
So we usually do trivia based on the presentation.
Okay.
And you guys have brought your own swag.
That's
so
right.
if you'd like to do that, or if you have other schemes in mind, it's all yours.
Okay, so we'll just ask a couple of trivia questions. You have to think one. I already have one.
And standard Salesforce
You do too?
rules. Raise your hand so we can try to keep it in order.
You go first with yours.
Okay. Mine's easy. How you spell my last name? Just kidding. So mine is going to be based on which one did we use to for the agent to use? Did we use the Salesforce as the interface, or did we use the Cisco Agent Desktop as the interface? Wait a second.
Gail probably had the first hand there.
Okay.
This is Cisco.
Cisco, correct.
So you get to pick. Would you like a Liquid Hub mug or a hat?
Oh, I'm all about the mug. I drink a lot.
That's a rarity. That's the first Liquid Hub logo stuff.
I know.
Well, because we're presenting.
Yeah.
Thank
He's
you.
been holding. I don't even get one.
Okay. So mine is, what was the international carrier? Not AT&T, not Sprint, not Verizon.
Cable and wireless.
Very good. So you get half. Well, I guess you could pick from this swag. Is that a true statement?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll take the force.com out.
Okay. Thank you.
In case anyone else wants to.
Do you have any other ones?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, let's go. We need to get out some more swag. Yeah,
We'll have one more.
Can anybody tell?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can anybody? What does IVR stand for?
Interactive voice record.
Nope.
Recorder.
Nope.
Recognition.
Nope.
Response.
Yes.
Get us one.
That was a good one.
Awesome.
Good.
And I thought he was sleeping over there.
I was, but I got that part.
Probably woke up. He said, "Swag, what? Yeah, I got that."
Okay, and then one last one then is, what method do the field folks of this customer prefer to call into the call center?
Local phone numbers.
Local phone numbers, all right? And why?
Because it gets out of the country call center.
It's cheaper. All right, well, thank you guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.